All right, so for quiz 6, the goal of the quiz is to compare 2 articles on the same topic and identify the confounding variable. In other words, what is one of the articles, because one of them is a bit more spot on, what are they missing about the analysis of the data, and what incorrect conclusion have they come to by ignoring that other variable? Okay, so one of the articles that was an option on there was weather, climate change, weather, and aggressive behavior like rioting. And one article stated warmer temperature leads to higher number of riots or aggressive behavior by people. Therefore, weather has an impact on aggressive behavior. It's an increase. Okay. Now, just pausing here, does that resonate as true to you?
I've heard that, especially growing up in the South. I've heard that, and living in some bad neighborhoods. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe one could go like, well, maybe more people are outside and maybe more like, I mean, we can kind of maybe pull at things, but the biggest piece that's missing is the social context of when the data was gathered, which was during a time of social upheaval. And that's what was leading to rioting, right? That was the issue. So it's ignoring the social context. That's the confounding variable. It's not necessarily that in hot weather, you're going to have more fighting. It's that when it was captured, that's what was happening. So that's one of the articles. There's another one you can look at. But the goal of that assignment is for you guys to read it and to pull out like what was done incorrectly, or what was the incorrect conclusion that the researchers drew from this data. That is the goal of the assignment. I noted on there 2 to 3 pages. Hopefully by week 6, you guys know, I'm not super picky on length. As long as you get your message across, I am a-okay. So questions about that, or does that make sense?
You know, it's funny
I
because
had planned on doing, I'm sorry, Laura,
go ahead, please, Bradford, please.
No, I planned on doing those 2 articles. Is that okay to still do those? Okay.
Again, I think I even noted and I don't know why it's not loading for me, so I can't see my own prompt, but I think the goal was critical thinking. I think I wrote that. That was my drive, is to have you guys kind of look at it and go, does this make sense? Or, I mean, the best example that I give all of my undergrad stats students is saying, when you see a fire or an emergency on the road, and then you see fire truck, is your go-to thinking, there's always fire trucks when there's a fire, the fire trucks must cause the fire? That's idiotic, right? We know that's not true, but the two are always present together, right? But what is the underlying context? It's because the people in the fire trucks are helping put out the fire, right? So that's the context that's missing. So the confounding variable that may not be measured, if you're just looking at presence of fire trucks, and it's kind of a silly example, but you get the gist. Like if you just look at the numbers, you could draw a totally different conclusion. Okay, what was going to be your question, Laura, or your comment?
The first thing I thought was, oftentimes, and maybe because I've been hanging out with nurses lately, they'll say, stay hydrated, stay hydrated. Mm-hmm. Because if you're dehydrated, you're not at your best. You're not thinking clearly, you're prone to fainting spells. So I actually looked at that. I didn't think about anything else except, did those folks who are experiencing high heat, are they staying hydrated?
Yeah. So then again, maybe, so there's another context. Is it that because the researchers are creating this positive linear relationship, the higher the heat, the more the rioting, it's quite myopic, right? Because then you're just looking at those 2 variables. And again, could there be other factors that better explain it? Yes.
Yeah. And I think it is key to think of critically. I really do think that's going to be the defining tone of being in a doctoral program.
Yep.
Because it has to set you apart.
Yep.
No, I'm not saying that in a condescending way or anything like that, but you always have to say there's more than meets the eye, right?
Yes.
There's got to be more in depth. We got to look at the iceberg, below the iceberg, to understand fully what's the phenomenon.
And almost like my goal or wish or, as we conclude this course, it's going to sound weird, but this is truly what I think. I don't want you guys to become cynical, but I want you to always be questioning, right? To not be spoon-fed answers of like, this is the results, this is what it means, to go from results to discussion and gobble it up, but to go to result, pause, what do I think? Does that fit? And then evaluate, what is the discussion they're feeding me? And am I in agreement? Because researchers, and perhaps you guys have experienced this yourselves, like you get so embedded in a topic that you're like, well, this is only here. It's only, this is the only thing it could possibly be. And then somebody else asks you a question, you're like, well, I never considered that. What? But as a reader and an academician, as you're moving forward, I want you guys to have that opportunity to pause and really think, what does this mean? Do I agree with it? Did they make an erroneous error here in their assumptions? Are there statistics what I would have done? Is there something about their participant pool that is really faulty, that they've skewed the data one way or the other? So
I wanted to just bring this up because I know that so much of the class itself it goes through the biblical lens, right? And so I think about the Bereans, right? And I'm looking at it even right now as of this morning. And they said, now the Berean Jews were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true. As a result, many of them believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and many Greek men. So I think to myself, if there's anything that researchers who are believers in Christ Jesus, is that they ought to be examining.
yeah, that's very true.
So it's kind of neat to say, you know what, if somebody gives me a hard time, I'm just going to say, I'm like the Bereans.
Right. I'm following in the right footsteps here. Absolutely. Anything else that could be helpful with the class? Projects, timelines, what's left?
About the final paper, of course. By the way, I was able to find a psychometric that Cynthia Ferronda did. Can you believe that?
Great.
They called it a premium journal.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so a premium journal will not be given to you for free. You have to pay for it. And it was just one of those things that I even asked for it. So I did find it, and what I will do, Dr. Woltel, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because it's, even looking at it, it's like, okay. What does it look like? I mean, it's the doozy. It's a psychometric testing of an instrument to measure cultural humility. And she's got a table, item content validity trainings, ratings. And then she's got a second table, rotated component matrix. And she's got it, and there's some really cool stuff. My desire was to maybe ask at a different time, because obviously this is more of a generic office hour, is to kind of help me with how she went about conducting this, because it's not cookie cut. It's not like the Joshua Hooks scale, but it's a gem. And here it is.
Well, absolutely. I would love for us to, chat. Let's email after this and find a time to talk about that, because then you can also lay it out. So, and this is applicable for all, when you're going to discuss your survey, and I just want to make it very clear, the expectation is not for anyone to create their own survey here. First of all, this is a mock assignment. We're not actually running data. And if you wanted to go through a test creation, that process alone, I would not recommend it as a dissertation. It's so complex and requires multiple rounds of gathering of data. But once you do find an article or a survey or an instrument, the validity and reliability needs to be discussed in your chapter 3, right, in the methodology, so that you're not using Uncle Bob's measure of intelligence, right? Like no one cares about what Uncle Bob thinks. We need to have a validated, researched measure, which will show that it has high reliability with other instruments like it, right? So that shows high content validity, high construct validity. And then we want to make sure that it is reliable in terms of test, retest. So if somebody takes it today, they take it later, does it stay stable over time? Those kinds of measures. So you're going to be reporting in that method section R values, right? Because that's correlation when you look at reliability. You're going to look at intra-test validity, right? And that's going to be your Cronbach alpha. That's how it's going to be reported as a value less than 1. Closest to 1 means that the items really hung together well, and it's a good instrument in measuring your latent variable. So those are the values that I'm looking for. So as you're looking at your article, Laura, and you and I will talk about that, that's what you want to pull out of it to be able to discuss in the final paper. Does that make sense?
Yes, it says here, the reliability coefficient of the Cronbach alpha is 0.85.
That's excellent. Truly anything above 0.7 in the social sciences, you're like, woo, this is great. So
Winner.
exactly.
Okay.
So I'm going through what I've pulled apart for measuring what I'm looking at, and there's a couple of things. I'm pretty fortunate that I think I can look at measures of job satisfaction and work motivation, things like that, that I know have been measured and studies have been done on, and I have those. Depending on how all of that ties together and what I find, I might be emailing you for some help digging deeper, but that's my plan for tomorrow. That's my day, is getting into that. So.
Yeah, again, please do lean on me. I think all of you guys have my cell phone number. You can always shoot me a text. That's the fastest way for me to respond. And then we can always come up with an alternate time to do like a one-on-one. Just reiterating again, this week, I asked you guys in terms of a written assignment to just think through what stats you would want to run for your final paper. That is not a point earning document. It's just really keeping you guys on track and keeping you kind of thinking of next week, right? So if you're like, I have no idea, well, there's an opportunity for us to talk about it so that you can be set up for success for next week. But really, aside from the quiz for this week, the regular discussion, and then your reflection, that's it. Then week 7, next week, you'll be submitting your final paper, which is your literature review. And then in addition to that, your methodology, which we'll talk about your participants, what instrument, and then what stats you want to do.
Okay.
And then that's it. And then we say goodbye, and that always makes me very sad. Any other questions I can help with?
I think I was just going back, Dr. Woltel, on the email that you sent regarding the final paper update. You sent that on the 29th. And I think you just kind of went over that. It just say plan on 3 to 5 pages for the next chapter. And so obviously, are you looking for the literature review in that particular order, literature review, methodology, and then the final piece, that being, what would you reference that to be? Yeah,
so great question. So the final paper is the literature review. So the document that you submitted in week 4,
yes.
Any edits I may have sent to you, for several of you, I just asked 2 questions, sometimes to clarify hypotheses. It may kind of differ per person, but that piece, right, your week 4 product, and then tack on those 3 to 5 pages, which is your chapter 3, essentially, your methodology. So it's a highly truncated version of that. So what you started working on last week on that writing assignment that you guys emailed, where you talked about who you would want in your study, how would you want to recruit them, and what instrument you would want, you'll include that. And then what you're doing this week, which is what stats would you want to do? Once
Okay.
you have all that, you just add it on to your literature review, and that's where you're submitting as your final paper. So that's what I meant, like the bulk of the heavy lifting of the course was really that week 4 assignment, because that was a meaty project. This last bit is far more linear and prescriptive and shorter. So if you're like, this doesn't feel like enough work, that means you're on the right track, because it's not supposed to be as much work.
Very good. Could you speak, and forgive me for being redundant, could you speak on that third piece, which is, and maybe it belongs to week 7, so maybe I'm a little bit thinking way too early, but can you speak on that third piece of that final paper, which is the statistics? Are you asking us to predict something, or what would you like that to be about?
Got it. That's actually this week. It's your written assignment for this week. It's
Okay.
thinking once, so again, we're future pacing, right? Once you have your data, you've gathered your data, you've given your instrument, what statistics would you want to run on this data to answer your hypotheses?
Okay.
So that is really meant to be 1 to 2 sentences, right? In order to evaluate college success in entering freshman class, I will be doing a correlational analysis between their SAT scores and their current GPA, right? Something like that.
Mhm.
Or in order to determine if there's a significant difference between missionaries versus nurses that travel abroad, I will give them this instrument to do a t-test.
Okay. Could I even address regression analysis? Is that a good time?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
If that's that's what you're looking at. In order to assess the best predictors of healthy living, the following factors, age, blood pressure, blah, 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 will be measured to determine fitness level. And you know what I mean? Like I'm making stuff up here, but absolutely.
Okay.
So again,
Thank
that's what I mean. Like that one should be like 1 to 2 sentences, because you don't have data, you're not analyzing anything. You're just saying, this is what I would want to do. And truly, when you submit your proposal, that's what you're doing. You're saying, hey, once I gather my data, if you're going the quantitative route, this is how I would want to analyze the data. There's not a whole lot more to that.
Yes. I get the sense, even as I'm looking at this, whether I'm watching a lecture or something, that it always goes back to the question.
Yes.
Right.
That's how it should always be, because otherwise you will have a reader who will give you this comment. Where are we? Why are we talking about this, right? It needs to constantly be eye on the prize. This is my question and this is why I'm doing it. It definitely needs to be connected.
Okay. All right, that's really helpful. It just seemed like if I didn't have, and I think that's something that Dr. Salyard's brought up earlier, which is you got to go back to that question. And even as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, here we go again.
Yeah, because again, both are possible. You get so hyper focused that you're unable to see other possibilities, or you're almost like having squirrel moments is what I call when you're writing your paper. Like, oh, and this is really interesting. And that connects to this, and this connects to that. And now we're 8 steps away from where we started, but this is what we're trying to measure. So we need to bring it right back.
Yep. Thank you.
Brad, anything else I can do for you?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Nothing I know of at the moment, but I won't be bashful. If I need anything, I'll reach.
Okay, good. I like that. Thank you guys for letting me record this too, to share with the class. So if there's anything that they had questions about, I know I switched our time. My schedule got flopped this morning. So thank you for your flexibility.
Worked well for me. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Of course. Yeah, and we'll have time again next week, although by the end of the week, usually people are like, well, it's been submitted, but sometimes it's just a nice little farewell and checking in. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, well, if there's nothing else, then I'll wrap this up, put it up on YouTube and send it to the whole class. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions, and then we'll go from there.
Very good.
That's good.
Um,
Thank you. Y'all have a great weekend.
You
Thank
as
you,
well,
Brad.
Brad. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Dr. Wiltle, do you want me to, obviously, we're still recording, but,
Oh, I can stop.
okay. I have